Hello, everyone, and welcome into School Talk on 98.5 WJHI LP Jeffersonville, home of the Red Devil Network. We are officially through the first 2 weeks of school here in Greater Clark County Schools, the first in-person week done at the studios here at WJHI Jeffersonville High School, and I am joined by our superintendent of Greater Clark County Schools, Mr. Mark Laughner. How are we doing today, sir?
Great. Thanks for having me on.
Well, I know we've said it about every time we've come in, but you're the busiest man probably in Southern Indiana at the moment, getting school started on time. Let's look at recapping the first 2 weeks and how everything planned out for you. I know you've spent probably about 4 months planning for the opening week, but there's been really nothing compared to this, I would say, in your time as an educator. Did everything go as planned or as best as you planned, or what were some challenges that came up throughout the opening couple weeks of school?
Well, actually, things went really well. I visited every school during the first 3-4 days of school here, talked to every principal, walked every building. Each principal reported that their opening few days went very smoothly. So we're very happy in that regard. Now, some of the challenges have been, when you have secondary teachers trying to do both in-person instruction and the My School Online, that's a challenge, that we've had to work through over the first 3-4 days of school, which we're continuing to work through that. That's been a challenge. And just, trying to get students in school. And that's always a challenge to start the school year, just making sure students understand that, hey, school's started, you need to get in, you need to get registered, enrolled, make sure parents do that. But we want to know what our enrollment is, what our numbers are, in terms of students that are in person versus students that want the virtual My School Online option or the virtual academy option. So those are some of the challenges. As far as, things that deal with COVID and what we're doing there. Every school I went in, the students have been very compliant with wearing masks. The staff has been very compliant with wearing masks. Students are trying, they're making their best effort to keep their distance away from each other. And that's been a great thing to see, that we've asked them to do that and they're doing that.
I think we take it for granted day to day, you and I both being in the educational system, kind of what common knowledge is. And what I say by that is I heard from a lot of people, parents, members of other schools, why are you guys rushing to come back and be in person? I don't think people understand how difficult and different it is to start online the beginning of the year. I mean, you have the e-learning days, and I think people look at it like, well, hey, you were in February, you were on e-learning, why not start the year off? Explain to people how much more difficult and imperative it is to start the year off in person, because the online model to open the year is very difficult if you have to. It just makes things much more challenging for information for students and the whole start.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're trying to start a year off 100% online with all your students, number one, those students have no connection to the teacher at all. It's a teacher they probably haven't had and don't even know. And they don't know that teacher's policies, procedures, how they're going to handle assignments online, and so that's a really difficult chore to start the year that way, So, we felt like the best option for us was to start on time. July 29th has always been our start date because of the balanced calendar that we run, and we were ready to start. And we felt like we should start. For those students that wanted the in-person option, we felt like we should get going and allow those students to get in, meet their teachers, and then move forward. It's to me, it's very important that students make a connection with their teacher. Whether it's online, virtually, or in person. I feel like that's done better in person.
With COVID procedures, let's start with that. That's obviously the hot button topic. From the preventative standpoint, where does it start for Greater Clark County Schools? From if we start at the bus route, checking temperatures all the way to the end of the day, what measures have you taken, and how so far in the first 2 weeks successfully do you believe they've worked?
Yeah. Well, number one thing, masks are required, for all students, staff when they come in from grades 3 through 12. Preschool through second grade, we highly recommend that even those kids wear them along with the staff. When a student gets on the bus, number one, that bus driver has thoroughly cleaned and disinfected their bus before and after. When a student gets on the bus, there's a checklist of questions the driver is asking each student, such as, did you have a temperature last night or this morning? Do you have any of the symptoms of COVID? Now, the bus drivers are also taking their temperature. We did have an issue where some of our drivers, we were shorted some thermometers on our shipment, so we have those now. Every bus driver has them, so they're taking that temperature, when they get on the bus. Now, once they get to school, we have sanitizer dispensing stations throughout the school, strategically placed, where students can get hand sanitizer, clean their hands very quickly. The other thing that we did is every principal came up with a plan on social distancing in terms of how do you bring students into the school in the morning and still social distance? How do you do lunch and still social distance? And then how does dismissal go? And also, during the school day, how do you have times where students can go to the bathroom, wash their hands, make sure that they're doing that often, several times a day. Now, the other thing at the secondary level we've done is allowed our secondary schools to come up with a block schedule. That way there's less movement through the student day. Yes, they're staying in their classes a little longer, but instead of moving 7 times a day, they're only moving half that. So that's helped too, in terms of keeping that cohort group together a little longer, and also just less movement through the school day.
Once you have a positive case, if it comes up, and that's something that's going to happen in every school system, what is the procedure for that? Who gets called? Does the health department take over at that standpoint? Explain to a parent or a student, if there's a positive test, what are the steps and how you all approach it?
Yeah, and a lot of it depends on who lets us know. If the parent calls us and lets us know that, hey, their child tested positive, then we reach out to the health department immediately to get them involved. Sometimes it's the health department that contacts us, said, hey, you have a student at so-and-so school that has tested positive. Once we get that information, our principals, Teresa Stingle, our health director, they start working with the health department on contact tracing. Who was this student around in the classroom, the lunch cafeteria, what table were they sitting at? We have assigned seats in all those areas, so it's easy for the principal to track where they were and who they were around with. Then what the principal does, they have to, and also what Teresa Stingle does, our director of health for the district, they have to decide if those other students were exposed to that student, in the classroom, in the cafeteria. And what an exposure was that student within 6 feet of the student that tested positive for more than 15 minutes. If they were within 6 feet for more than 15 minutes, then that student would have to be quarantined. And we work through all that with the health department. And then typically, Teresa Stingle works with the principals on identifying those students that need to be quarantined. And then the health department, once we give them that list of names, the health department pretty much takes over from there in terms of contacting the parents, letting the parents know, letting the student know, hey, there's a form that the health department makes them fill out, and also on that form it tells them how long they have to quarantine and stay out of school. So that's sort of the process, that once we know there's a positive case, we get with the health department immediately, start contact tracing, and then between our administration and also the health department, those parents are contacted of the students that potentially were exposed and need to quarantine.
Here with Mark Laughner on School Talk 98.5 WJHI LP Jeffersonville on August the 10th. Catching up with Mr. Laughner throughout the first couple weeks being finished at Greater Clark County Schools. Let's switch to e-learning a little bit. I think another thing that probably should be touched on from a student and parent standpoint is e-learning, from the sense of last year when we had e-learning, when we got past the point that we knew we weren't going to come back and we were going to be going into the summer with e-learning, I think a lot of teachers and a lot of people around the country were just putting out assignments, trying to make sure and just get through the best they can. I know you've been very heavy throughout the summer with your administrative cabinet, going to the teachers saying, hey, we want to up the level of e-learning. How did you go about developing and training with your staff and making sure that when students come back this year that are on the virtual option, that it's a more thorough e-learning experience?
Well, I think, going back into the spring, everybody was in crisis mode, and everybody was just trying to do the best they could, and a lot of what happened in the spring, in terms of e-learning, we basically we're just trying to maintain any kind of education we could, and that meant covering a lot of old material. Assignments were more extra credit versus assignments that counted in the grade book. There wasn't as much virtual interaction between the student and teacher. And we realized really quick that we need to set a higher expectation for that program. And so that's the first step, is setting the expectation for, number one, teaching new concepts, new material, making sure our teachers understand that they're going to have to do that. They're going to have to follow the state standards and teach those state standards for their subject area. Also, there needed to be more interaction between the student and teacher each week, so that there's that face-to-face component. And what we found already in the first few days of school, our students really like that. The ones that are doing My School Online, they want to see their teacher and talk to their teacher, and that's gone well. And then the other issue is, how do you do those educational best practices online? Things such as making sure the information that the teacher is teaching is relevant. Is it engaging? Is it interactive? And that's probably the thing we really needed to focus on most, was those best practices, things that teachers do in their classroom day to day. Now, how do you do that virtually? Because the lessons they're teaching online have to be engaging, they have to be relevant, they have to be interactive, and the teacher needs to be able to figure out, are the students learning the material that they want them to learn? And so, we've done training on that. We've set the expectation. We're going to do more professional development as we go through the next month to 2 months. We have a company called 5 Star that's helping us do some training with our teachers. There's also another person we've contracted with, Dave Nagel, who does excellent work with teachers on teacher training, and also principal leadership training in terms of best practices in the classroom, whether it's virtual or in person. So we're going to continue to train our teachers. We realize that we're going to have to keep that option there in terms of the My School Online, the virtual option, and we want to make sure that it's a good option for our students and our parents, and that's going well.
A real positive that has maybe come for Greater Clark County Schools out of this whole crisis with COVID is potential enrollment numbers going up. How many numbers do you expect to add from school systems around the area that aren't starting on time, or maybe won't be in session for first semester? And as well with that, how do you prepare for adding in more students in a time where it's definitely a little bit more difficult than the average year?
Yep. Well, and right now that's difficult because we're sort of sorting through that right now, because you have the in-person component, which those students are easy to count. They're in the building. But then you have the My School and the Virtual Academy component, where students have to check in with their teacher in order to be counted as present, for school and the enrollment count. So we're working through that. But right now, I will say that our enrollment numbers look pretty good. If it holds true, it looks like we could be up anywhere from 150, 200 students. If it holds true. Obviously, we want to make sure that that's accurate, and we're working through that right now. But we have gotten a lot of phone calls from students from other districts in the area, because they felt like the plan we have in terms of giving students options is a good plan, whether it's in person or virtual. And they also, I think the word is out there that we were ready for e-learning, and we did it pretty well, compared to other districts. And we've had students come over to Greater Clark because we were prepared and we did it well, and we had a good plan in place. And so, I think that'll be a positive. Now, we're monitoring those numbers in terms of how many of those students that come to us, do they pick the in-person option or the My School Online? We're constantly monitoring those numbers. So, and we'll stay on top of that because we want to make sure that we still have space within our schools to social distance, and we don't let classes get overcrowded. If you remember, we talked a few weeks ago that our number was about 68% that wanted to return to in-person instruction, and we felt good about that. And I think we're still hanging at about 68% of our students wanted to return to in-person instruction. We felt good about that number. We still feel good about that number in terms of the number of kids that are in school that we can socially distance in the classroom, in the hallways, and in the cafeteria.
Speaking of kids that want to come back, looking at the elementary school level, a couple weeks ago you had the launch of Franklin Squares Elementary downtown, WJHI there to film and check out. I know you were having your way down the slide, which I didn't expect to see for the for the opening day, but bring about kind of how the project started with the Franklin School Elementary, and then what that adds to the school system design there. Very well done, and it certainly pops very well with different colors, and again, all the different amenities of the slide and the classroom space. Speak a little bit about the opening there and how things are going.
Well, the opening went really well, and I think the kids, you could just see that the kids and the parents were very proud of that school. They're proud to have that downtown school right there in their neighborhood. It's a true neighborhood school. And the building is excellent. I mean, the classroom space, the hallway space, the cafeteria, playground. What was done with that space in a small amount of property is excellent. And I think the project, from start to finish, the corporation and the city of Jeffersonville wanted to maintain that downtown presence. And with what's going on in terms of downtown Jeffersonville and things developing down there and growing down there, there needed to be that presence down there for students that move into that area. So we feel really good about the enrollment down there. We think it'll continue to go up. We're also doing some programming there in terms of some STEAM programming with science, engineering, math, and arts that we think will attract kids there. But we're very, very happy and excited about what's going on down there, and think it'll continue to grow. And I think it's a great addition to just the feel of downtown Jeffersonville and what's going on.
When you look, as we kind of settle here in the last couple questions, sports obviously still a big topic that's surrounding really Kentucky, Indiana, and everywhere in the country. Any updates? I know from the IHSA you're very close with Chad Gilbert. We talked about in the past, the athletic director over at Charlestown. Everything's still planned to be on schedule. I know you've done a lot of work when it comes to the facility designs, which I had a chance to look at Charlestown's last week. Everything seems to be coming all on the up and up with Jeff and Charlestown's facilities. Do they plan to play on time, and what's the latest from the IHSAA?
Well, everything I've heard is that the IHSAA is still a go for football season and fall sports. Some of them have actually already started in terms of golf and cross country. So I'm hearing that things are going to be moving forward. Now, it will be a unique season, I believe. I think you'll have, much like what we're dealing with in the schools where, like here at Jeffersonville High School, we had to do 5 days of e-learning to start school. I think you'll have weeks where some teams may not be able to play because they have a certain number of kids quarantined, and maybe that school just has to, forfeit or take a bye that week. But then the following week they'll be able to play. I do think it'll be a very unique season in that regard, and you probably won't make up those games. It'll just be a bye or a forfeit or whatever. The team that had to quarantine too many kids just won't be able to play. But from what I understand, they're moving forward. They want to see a season happen. They want to see a fall championship happen from everything I'm hearing. And so, I think everybody's going to have some patience, and because it will be a different kind of season, but I think it's moving forward. In terms of our facilities, both turf fields are completed. The Moats Group finished those up. They're now finishing up the tracks and the bleachers at both. They both look fantastic. And I think when they're completed, I think everyone will be proud of how nice they are, and adding that element to our schools for our student athletes will be a great thing. At Charlestown High, their first game of the year is at home, so we're in a little bit of a crunch time right now to make sure the bleachers are done and the track is done and fencing and getting everything cleaned up. So we're sort of up against the wall on that one, but at Jeff High we have a little more time because I think the first 3 games are away. When they're done, it's going to be excellent for those schools. I just think for the number one, for the student athletes to be able to play on a facility and in a facility like that will be a great thing for the student athletes. But also, in the bigger scheme of things, we've talked about this, Clay, that when parents are trying to decide where they want to send their child to school, the first thing a lot of them do is drive around the school. and look at your facilities. And if they see that things are nice, on the outside, then they're more than likely, going to look at your school as an option for their child. And this certainly also does that too, in terms of having nice facilities that when people drive around and look and see what we have, they're more likely to say, yeah, I want my child to attend that school.
Last thing as we wrap up here on School Talk with Mark Laughner, any going away message or maybe an idea of a major update or anything to keep in mind if you're a parent or student of Greater Clark County Schools?
No, as we've said in the past, that everything's fluid. Things could change daily, weekly. What I will tell our parents out there that are anxious and concerned, we are working very, very closely with the health department and Dr. Yazel. Anytime there's an issue, a positive case or a concern, we talk to them immediately. And we're taking recommendations from them, daily. And if they recommend for us to do something with a school, whether it be close the school for a day and go to e-learning, or close the school for a week or 2 weeks and go to e-learning, that's what we're going to do. If they recommend that, hey, we see a lot of cases popping up in Jeffersonville, we want you to close all the schools in Jeffersonville and go to e-learning for a couple weeks. If the health department makes that recommendation because there's a little bit of a spike in cases in one community, we're going to do that. And I just want people to know that we're in very, very close communication with Dr. Yazel, and we don't take this lightly. And if he recommends we do something, we're going to follow that recommendation.
Well, Mr. Laughner, appreciate you coming in today. I know the schedule's been quite jammed lately, but glad you could join us again, and hope to see you once again here on School Talk.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That is Mr. Mark Laughner, our superintendent of Greater Clark County Schools. You can watch the replay of School Talk every day. Watch, listen, or stream at 1 and 7 p.m. and is on a few different platforms of the Red Devil Network. First on 98.5 FM and WJHI.com streaming audio, and then also on television, TV, cable 184. And to add with that, we have now added the Red Devils Network, which has been up on YouTube. School Talk will be posted on there as well, so you can find it online at YouTube as well. Stay updated to Greater Clark County Schools social media along with WJHI for updates and the latest news. We thank Mark Laughner for coming in. I'm Clay Abel saying so long for School Talk here on August the 10th. Appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you next time on 98.5 WJHI, LP Jeffersonville, home of the Red Devil Network.